everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon, and I am the Paradise Engineer. Today, I have an interesting topic that I want to discuss. I wrote an article about aliens. More specifically, why would extraterrestrials attack Earth? I wanted to kind of get over that question and see. Actually, I wanted to show, after a lot of thinking about it and consulting with others and mostly a lot of thinking, I'd like to show that it would be extremely, extremely unlikely that aliens would come to Earth from somewhere else to attack it. Despite all the science fiction movies and all the stories you may have heard, and all the speculation and all the fear of aliens, maybe, and we need a military to defend. And we've participated in all these discussions with friends and family, and after going to a movie, usually. But fortunately for us, it's very unlikely. And to start off, what is the likelihood that there is an intelligent spacefaring civilization out there anyway? Well, it turns out that after a recalculation of the Drake equation, that's an equation that calculates the likelihood of intelligent civilizations to appear somewhere in the universe or inside the galaxy, there's a fairly high chance that there is a similar civilization to ours, meaning, technologically advanced, evolved from the Earth, and not the Earth, but from a planet somewhere in the galaxy somewhere. And that's because of the origin of the Drake equation. They don't assume or factor in the possibility of any one of those intelligent civilizations to create life, because we're capable of creating new life. We've started doing it for the last few years in laboratories, like brand new life, new DNA, new novel DNA. And we've even, I think a couple of weeks ago, we've had reports of a team creating biological robots, like tiny little robots that we can program, for example. So the Drake equation doesn't take that into account. Let's say 100 years from now, we're going to start seeding other planets with life. Perhaps another civilization that is advanced more than us could have seeded life, and then that increases the amount of potentially intelligent life in the universe and in the galaxy if that starts happening through scientific intelligent design. But anyhow, the Drake equation doesn't take that into account. It's strictly about the same kind of theoretical evolutionary process that human beings may have grown out of on Earth, but happening elsewhere. So that being said, what are the chances that this or these other civilizations that may exist in the galaxy would come to eat us, beat us up, enslave us, whatever? Well, the real question is, what would be the motivation, right? So to go into that rabbit hole, we have to look at motivation and what it is. Because human motivation is not the same as an animal's motivation or an alien's motivation, because motivation is really one of two things. The strongest one, the more resilient one, is one that comes out of emotions. Motivation comes from movement, and also emotions come from movement, because emotions drive us to action in a sometimes irrational way. It's an impulse, an instinct, because it's programmed into our body in the way we were built, right? We feel a certain amount of emotions, we feel a certain amount of feelings, and that drives us to do certain things at different time. And in a general sense, this is applied for every single intelligent being out there, that, or at least not even intelligent, but any living creature out there. Every living creature tries to avoid discomfort and try to go towards what we would globally call joy. So a positive hormonal or activation feeling. It makes you feel good, okay? Let's call it joy for now. And discomfort is all these bad feelings that you want to avoid. So this applied for everything that is alive, and it would even apply to deep learning AI, because we give them emotions, and I have an article about that too, so that they can navigate the world and do things according to certain primal drivers that are programmed in without having to code in all the circumstances of it. So biological beings also have programming inside us, like us, to a point where, based on circumstances, um, there will be certain things, certain circumstances that will make us feel uncomfortable and thus run away or move away or deal to resolve the discomfort or to move towards joy. So, and for, let's say, a fish, discomfort is to be in air. For us, being underwater without a breathing apparatus is uncomfortable, can't breathe. Okay, so a lot of it is about survivalism. So we've developed our whole society and a whole luxury market and a whole economy in trying to eliminate as much discomfort as possible and provide us with something as joy as possible, because that's our primary purpose in life, is to try to achieve those two goals: avoid discomfort and feel happy and feel good. Okay, so every animal, every living thing, even mechanical with AI, as long as there's some kind of intelligent that has some kind of programming, will go towards those goals. Now, what the circumstances that, just like the idea with the fish and the human, will change, for the alien. Some aliens may feel quite uncomfortable in air as well, because they may breathe, I don't know, carbon dioxide, and oxygen may have an adverse effect on their breathing apparatus, maybe an irritant or something. So they want to avoid oxygen. That's uncomfortable for them. Okay, maybe what makes them feel comfortable and joyful is something completely different than what would allow us. Maybe they feel actually a feeling of joy because of their inner programming of having a cut in their body, even though it is damaging. Maybe they're built in a certain way that it gives a certain feeling of joy. So they'll have a tendency to do that to themselves and healing themselves and regenerating or whatever, because that's a primary driver. So we don't know, like these speculative aliens out there, we have no idea what kind of circumstances would drive them to avoid discomfort or go towards joy. But what is really important to note is that this primal driver is irrational, and for whatever it is, for whoever it is, it's primal, it's irrational, and it would drive them to actions that in our human history, and also in the looking at animals under stress or supreme discomfort, drive them to do things that are kind of rash to avoid or remove the discomfort. So that's what we have to look at if we want to see if an alien civilization would cross interstellar space to come to the planet Earth. Well, if they're coming here to scratch an itch, to remove a discomfort, well, that's pretty primal. That's pretty intense kind of motivation. If they're coming here to beat up on us because that's the only way they're gonna feel joy, well, that's pretty primal as well. So that's a good reason to fear the alien if that is something that may happen. Now, if we look at the discomfort level, civilizations that are, if you look at just interstellar space, the closest star to our own is Alpha Proxima. No, yeah, Proxima Centauri, sorry. And it is, I believe, 4.5 light years away. So that at the speed of light, which is the limit of what we can imagine as the speed is for any kind of matter at infinite energy levels, it would take us 4.5 years to get there. Now, other stars are quite farther than that, like 8 light years, 20, and so on and so on. So let's assume the laws of physics apply to these alien individuals. Well, crossing interstellar space to come to us at maximum speed, which would be light speed, theoretically, unless we invent warp drives and other ways to travel space that does not traverse the actual space, which is theoretically possible. It would take them probably a few generations. So that takes a lot of motivation. And if we know anything about civilizations, and we do, because we've had many civilizations here on Earth, usually especially with advanced technologies like that, it would be needed to cross interstellar space, even more so if you develop things like warp drives. Then you have the technology and the ability to resolve your discomforts, either medically, genetic engineering wise, or using technology. Using the technology, using the knowledge of your own bodies and in your own solar system. You don't have to go to another system that may take a generation or a few years to get to scratch that itch. There would be no primal reason to remove us as a discomfort as part of their evolutionary path, because it would be way easier on their resources to just understand who they are and how they work and just fix it where they are. You don't want to go out to beat up on another civilization just to make yourself feel more comfortable. And same thing with joy. With that level of technology, even if you're like a speculative hunter species that only feels joyful by hunting equal, beings with equal intelligence, for example. Well, we're able to create life right now, and it's year 2020, and we're not even like reasonably in space very much, not at any appreciable speed. So if that civilization is able to cross into interstellar space, they're able to create biological robots that are hyper intelligent and hyper great prey or hunters, and release them into the galaxy with technology and hunt them down and just have fun, just going at it if they want to. They can solve their own joys, their own discomfort issues without going and bother other civilizations elsewhere. Now, the other possible aspect is that if these emotions are triggered through ideology, because these emotions, these drivers of discomfort and joy are not exclusively triggered in living beings through primal emotions. They can be triggered through ideology, through illusory fears and anger and emotions. So just like us, for example, for our leaders have compelled us, population, to attack other nations through fear. And by telling us, using propaganda, religion, whatever else, to tell us, well, you should fear this. And fear is supposed to be most effective when it's primal, when it's about survival, and you want to run away. And so the leaders said, well, we can't run away because they're going to come and get us. So we should be angry instead. Anger is another primal emotion that forces us to remove something. Like even if because it's propaganda, it can be put into our head that this threat is real, even though it's not. Okay, it could be put in our head that it is, and then we must be angry and defeat them on their own soil before they come and attack us and burn our homes and whatever. Okay, that's been a tool of propaganda for a long, long time. And with information, though, we're less duped by that, because we live in democracies here where the media is kind of free and information is free flowing. So that's human civilization nowadays. So it is possible for an alien civilization to have such propaganda, religion, government, and political control of media, and to kind of control their population to say, hey, look, that civilization that is 500,000 light years away is a threat, and they're barbarians, and we have to go out and beat them up. Okay, because of ideology ABC. We should be alone in the universe. Our gods created only us, and everybody else is kind of Satan, and whatever they may spiel in their alien religion, right? Distances are so far, it's very, very unlikely that this would even occur, even though it is remotely possible that this would happen. It's a lot of assumptions, a lot of speculation. Uh, but to convince a population of this over many years, especially an advanced civilization with access to a lot of information and technology, it's extremely hard to think that a population over many generations, because it would take a long time to cross all that distance, generations or even years, would want to go onto this crusade to smack down on a faraway alien that has no bearing or no influence on them at all. That's really hard to figure out. Civilization would, without going into primal instincts, going just because of rationality, especially an advanced one that has gone through, the process of perhaps beating themselves up for a while between nations, and then unifying, and then finding that reason to go that far, and through propaganda and whatnot to beat up on the other race. That's, I mean, who knows? But there may be one other civilization out there that is advanced according to the Drake equation. Very unlikely that's going to be their particular state of mind and paradigm, and even less likely that even if they start the trip, that by the end they'll think it's worth it, because you got like generations going by, and then they figure, well, like, why are we even hating these people? Like, the new babies come out or whatever, and it's like, why are we going there? Why are we trying to hurt these people? Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I wouldn't deny the tiny possibility of that. So let's keep that open mind just in case. Anyhow, so, but that's on core motivation. There's not a lot of reasonable probability of that. But what the science fiction movies do say is like, well, maybe it's they'll come because they need our resources. Now that's a rationale and a rational motivation, perhaps, of civilization to cross large distances. Maybe they need the resources to survive. That's all about survival. A community that goes, that has to go because it has no choice, it has to keep going, and so on and so forth. Okay. And this is something that's an idea that comes from our own history, because we've done that a lot, either out of greed or out of need. We've gone out and took other people's resources and used weapons to do so. So it's, on the surface, it sounds good. In reality, it's a terrible and very unrealistic and entirely nonsense concept. And I'll tell you why. Like Hubble and Kepler and all these telescopes, and actually, I think the it's TESS, I think the new one that looks exclusively for exoplanets. We've been able to analyze the materials on a lot of planets, like thousands of exoplanets in other solar systems, our solar system, and we're able to discover that an Earth-like planet, there's a lot of them everywhere. And every planet, even though the phases, like, liquid, gaseous, or solid, like the phases in the planets, depending on the temperature, are different. Like some planets will have liquid water, others will have it in ice, others will have it in vapor because of temperature differences. But generally, all the planets have the same elements of the periodic table. There's no such thing as was it unobtainium? You saw in Avatar. We haven't discovered anything like that. Most of the high-end elements of the periodic table, the heavy ones, were created in laboratories because they are extremely unstable. So within the billion years of the life of planets, they don't exist in nature. Even they may have existed very periodically, very temporarily, but they're not stable. So all the planets, and there's billions of planets in our own galaxy alone. If you need more resources, well, they're everywhere in your own solar system. The asteroids everywhere. You don't need to beat up on anybody else, especially very far away, to get the resources. You can get it from any one planet anywhere. So that's not a reasonable idea for an advanced civilization to go to war. You don't come here to mine. You go to another planet and just mine there. Uh, there's a lot of planets. Okay. The second part was that comes sometimes from science fiction is, well, you can enslave humanity in some way because they may be useful pack animals and whatnot. And very few movies actually show that because a lot of people don't think that's very serious, as we're terrible workers. Like, we're not designed for hard work at all. We know this ourselves. And if you're advanced enough to travel distances, just like the hunter race kind of described earlier, you can create AI, robots, biological creatures of all shapes and sizes to do specialized to do work. Why would you cross interstellar space to get an inefficient uh, species that can't work and doesn't have any resilience in temperature? That'll probably fight you too. So that's really out. It really doesn't make any reasonable sense as a possible reason for it. So ultimately, once an alien civilization has passed a certain level of technology and understanding of themselves, of materials enough to make robots, to make AI, to make the rockets that cross interstellar space, and understands the universe and themselves and their own genetics and so on, they can create whatever they need to satisfy their discomforts, to satisfy their joys. The universe is full of resources everywhere. You don't need to bother anyone for it. And if you need workers or anything, you just build it yourself using materials that are local to you instead of crossing all these distances. There's no reason. So if this civilization survives the process of becoming an interstellar species, because you would think they'd have the energy to blow themselves up a lot of times over, just like we are we have already. They are inherently peaceful to us, even though their comfort, discomfort, and motivations and emotions may be completely different to ours, completely alien to ours. There's no reason for them to bother us at all, unless we come face to face. Maybe they won't like us then, right? Because we behave maybe in ways that would be unpleasant to them, and they'll want to stay away from us. Maybe we'll be uncomfortable to them once we are in front of them. And same for us. But the point is, like, we don't need to come face to face and be confrontational. The galaxy is big. If there is a meeting, you don't need to fight. You just can go somewhere else. Use fear, which is running away, instead of anger, which is removing the obstacle. So the chances are, like, to answer the Fermi paradox, which is the kind of question by Mr. Fermi, the Dr. Fermi, asking, where are all the aliens if there exist? Well, how come we can't see any signs and we can't receive anything? Well, maybe they're just, based on what I described, they're busy doing their thing everywhere else. They don't want to meet us or attack us or do anything because we're probably barbarians to them. If they are able to cross interstellar space, they're a more advanced civilization, probably very peaceful, and we're not peaceful. Not yet. And therefore, they probably just hide from us because they want us to poke into their business or to know they're there. So that's my answer to the Fermi paradox. If there are evolved civilization that have come out of the oozes of their own planets out there, we'll know for sure when we encounter aliens for the first time. But my analysis and reasoning here seems to be pretty sound. Of course, it's my idea, so of course I think they're sound. And therefore, I'm not afraid of extraterrestrials coming here, either in UFOs or otherwise. They're just checking us out, man. They don't need anything that we have at all. There's curiosity, some messages perhaps to us, like using crop circles and whatnot. I mean, sure, maybe sending us some subtle messages, making us aware that that there's an existence outside of the solar system. There are other civilizations out there. These are all reasonable justifications for some of these apparitions and sightings, and some of these stories we hear about sometimes, and also our past history and the pantheons and the gods of the old days that are very human feeling, and they look human, that they mate, and all this stuff. I mean, it could account for a lot of that stories. But definitely, they have no interest in officially, like openly mingling with us. They have no interest, and they have no desire nor any need to do anything on Earth except just being curious and watch and kind of looking at us funny. Because to them, we must be barbarians, and we must look like we don't know what we're doing, and then we're fighting over resources that are abundant everywhere, and we have this gap of living where some people are barely surviving or dying of famine, where others have most of the resources of a nation. Maybe looking at us and they say, well, these people are just barbarians and uncivilized. And if I were them, I wouldn't come here either until we wise up. And that's, I guess, part of the goal. And that's it for now. If you want to see the full article of what I wrote about this, you can look at it down below. And if you have any comments on this topic, feel free to share and comment on this, and I will certainly answer something if you want me to, if you are asking questions, for example. Bye-bye for now. Hope you enjoyed this, and it was thought-provoking. Hope eventually we do meet in advanced civilizations, because that would mean maybe they want to start a conversation, and they would be peaceful, and that would be super cool. Bye-bye.